So I feel like I'm on a trend with sermons not necessarily being a sermon, but more a story. So today's story is the story of Esther. And I want to thank Uncle John for continuing to prompt this in my heart. And yeah, I'm very honored to be speaking on this. It is quite a fascinating story. If you just go, who has recently read the book of Esther? Great, I'm so happy. Except Melissa, but she was forced to due to studies. But yeah, so I'm going to tell you the story of Esther, and we're just going to recap, and it's so fascinating. There's been so many books and movies about this particular story, and it is quite the nail-biter. I mean, there's kings and queens, and the girl gets the guy, and the good guys win, and the bad guys lose, or get impaled. And even though God is not mentioned once in this entire story, there's no talk of him. They don't reference him. He's just not mentioned, but you can clearly see his hand throughout this whole book. You can clearly see the moments where he kind of, it's just too coincidental. It's just the irony is just like, it's just too much. God had to be the orchestrator of this whole story. Okay, so it is quite long, so buckle up. Our story starts in the Persian Empire under the rule of King Xerxes, or his other name is Ahasuerus. I'm going to call him Xerxes. That sounds much cooler. The Jews had been exiled to Babylon after King Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple and the whole of Jerusalem. And then later, the Persians conquered Babylon. And even though King Cyrus, the king before King Xerxes, had allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem, some of them had established lives there. So they had families, they had communities. So that's where we find ourselves in Esther's time, where there's still Jews living in the Persian Empire, living under the Persian rule. Okay, chapter 1. King Xerxes, who was a somewhat impulsive and indulgent ruler, throws this elaborate banquet that lasts for 6 months. A party lasting, I can't even last past like 9 o'clock, but this was like 6 months of partying. And he just wanted to show off his wealth and how great his kingdom was and how great his rule is. And then after the 6 months, he extends the party. So the first 6 months was just for the noblemen and the rich and famous people. And then he opens the king's court for 7 days to the rest of the people of Susa, so they could come and join in the gathering. And it was quite excessive. Meanwhile, Queen Vashti had all the ladies for her own little banquet. So she was having a girls' night, and King Xerxes was having his own party. And then on the 7th day, King Xerxes had a little bit too much to drink. And he says to his advisors, bring the queen so we can show off her beauty and put a crown on her head and her royal robes, and she can come parade herself here in front of my friends. And Queen Vashti was just like, nuh-uh, I'm not going to do that. And the king was enraged because she had not listened to his command. So I'm going to read from Esther 1. It says, since it was customary for the king to consult, listen to this, experts in matters of law and justice, he spoke with the wise men who understood the times and were closest to the king. There's a lot of names. The 7 nobles of Persia and Media who had special access to the king and were highest in the kingdom. So we can assume these advisors were very close to the king. He trusted them. He trusted his kingdom with them. They were in his inner circle. Then verse 15 says, according to the law, this is what Xerxes asks, what must be done to Queen Vashti? He asks. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. Then Memucan replied in the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the people of all the provinces of King Xerxes. Verse 17, for the queen's conduct will become known to all women, so that they will despise their husbands and say, well, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought to him, and she would not come. This very day, the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of the king. Also let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. So divorce your wife and get a new one. Then when the king's edict is proclaimed throughout all the vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands from the least to the greatest, because we tell them they have to respect, their husbands. The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice. So the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province in its own script, and to each people in his own language, proclaiming that every man should be ruler of his own household using his native tongue. Okay, so here's my 5 cents. I think Queen Vashti and King Xerxes could really have handled this a little bit better. I feel like it escalated really quickly. Maybe he could have just talked to her, find out what's happening. But it was just, okay, done. And I understand it was a very different time, and there were loads of other customs. But they could have handled it a little bit better. So if I may, I'm going to throw some Proverbs at them and us. Proverbs 15, verse 1 says, Vashti, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger. And I have in my own house, this has happened many times, and I want to, my mom sitting back there. So Darius, a while back, he just refused to go to the bathroom. I'd be like, okay, kom Darius, jy moet nou gaan piepie, sis. And then ons gaan nou ry, and he was just like, mm-mm. And I would be like, kom nou, ons moet gaan piepie, blah. And I would get frustrated, I have to leave, we have to leave, we're going to be late, you have to go to the bathroom. And then my mom comes, hey, gaan jou reis, kom ons kyk wie gaan eers piepie. And then they run, and I'm like, there he goes. So a soft answer turns away wrath. Proverbs 19 verse 11 says, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. Isn't that a person's wisdom yields patience? The fruit that comes from God's wisdom in us is patience. I'm like, oh, Lord, give me your wisdom. Give me your wisdom so that I can have more patience. And it is to one's glory to overlook an offense. Now, I'm not certain what the customs were with this king, but maybe if he had overlooked her offense, something good would have come from it. Anyway, it's the advisors who are really interesting to me in this story. There are lots of times when the advisors or the friends or the wives are prominent in this story. They were so close to the king, yet their advice to him did not come out of love for the king or the kingdom. It came from fear and pride. To please the king, yeah. And it wasn't because they loved him. And the king's marriage ended because of their strange advice. Proverbs 13, verse 20 says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. And I think him ending his marriage was harm. Anyway, chapter 2. A while later, when the king, his anger had subsided, he still remembered Queen Vashti, and he still kind of thought about what happened. But his servants didn't think that King Xerxes should be left to his own thoughts for too long. So they were like, okay, let's, beauty contest. We're going to need to pick a new queen. And so they gathered all the lovely young women in the country and had, those rom-com movies where there's like a makeover happening. They like play the music and there's like the girl's hair gets straightened or curled and her glasses get taken away and she gets contact lenses. Anyway, so this happened to all the girls. And here is where we meet a kind and humble Jewish man named Mordecai, who was an attendant of the king's court. And Mordecai had a niece that he had raised as his own daughter since she was orphaned when she was a child. And her name was Hadassah, or as we know her, Esther. And Esther was beautiful, and she had a lovely character. And she was just a soft, I can just imagine her being a soft-spoken woman. And she was also taken to the king's harem, along with the other maidens, in the custody of Haggai, who was the keeper of the women. And Haggai was immediately chuffed with her. He was so pleased with Esther, and she obtained favor in his sight, and he gave her special treatment. He put her in the nicest apartment, he gave her the choicest of food, and he quickly gave her the treatments, like kind of to, set her apart before all the other girls. So when it was time for them each woman to go and be presented to the king, each woman could take whatever she desired from the harem into the king's palace. And then she had one opportunity to win the king's favor. And if the king liked her, he would call her back by name and she would become the queen. Easy as pie. Esther showing such wisdom. I was like, girl, she asked Haggai, what should I take with? What should I take with? You tell me. You know the king. You know what he likes. I'll take with whatever you say I need to take with. And she did. Verse 15 ends with Esther, who won favor in the sight of all who saw her. The king loved Esther, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight, and he made her the new queen. And verse 20, now Esther had not yet revealed her nationality or her people. Wait, I skipped a bit, sorry. Okay, Mordecai. While Esther was going through all these beauty treatments, Mordecai told her, don't reveal your Jewish nationality. And I was like, Hukum. He doesn't say why. But he told her, don't reveal it yet. And this is going to be important later in the story. They all knew Mordecai was Jewish, though. So I was like, didn't they just assume that Esther would also be Jewish? But they didn't. But Mordecai cared for Esther a lot, and every day he would walk to the harem's court and he would ask, how is Esther doing? What's happening with her? And it just showed how much he cared and loved for her. So Esther had not revealed her nationality or her people, for she obeyed Mordecai's command to her just as when she was being brought up by him. That was so interesting to me. She obeyed Mordecai's command to her just as when she was being brought up by him. I assume Mordecai was a good dad. I assume because she just trusted him. There was no oh, why? I'm not going to do this. She really trusted him. Proverbs 13 verse 15 says, good judgment wins favor, but the way of the unfaithful, or in another version it says the untrustworthy, leads to destruction. Then, right at the end of chapter 2, this incident happens. And you have to remember this because it's important later in the story. Mordecai overhears two of the king's guards plotting to kill him. And he tells Esther, who tells the king on Mordecai's behalf, and the traitors get dealt with, and the information gets recorded in the king's chronicles. Okay, remember that. Moving on swiftly, chapter 3, King Xerxes then promotes a man named Haman the Agagite. Now, if I ever, when you meet someone and their hairs on the back of your neck rise up a little bit, Haman, oh my goodness. He's our main antagonist in the story. He is our bad guy. King Xerxes elevates Haman above all the officials, and everyone has to pay respect and bow before Haman when he passes. But Mordecai refuses to bow to this man because Mordecai is a Jew, and Mordecai only bows down to who? Yes! See? It doesn't even say that in what we all know. Furious at Mordecai's defiance, Haman decides not only to punish Mordecai, but he was like, I'm just going to annihilate all the Jews. I mean, where did Xerxes find these people? Why? Talk about throwing your toys out the cart. Anyway, Haman even makes a game of this plot to kill all the Jews and like rolls dice to pick a date when he's going to suggest that all the Jews be killed. Seriously. He then, because he's trusted by the king, he then convinces the king to annihilate the Jews on this specific days. And King Xerxes, again, with no thought, just signs, seals, and delivers this law to the Persian Empire. Then chapter 4, when Mordecai learns of this decree, I mean, he must have been devastated. That's like, he mourns publicly in sackcloth and ashes, and Esther's attendants hear or see him, and they go tell her Mordecai is outside of the king's court. He can't come in sackcloth, and she sends clothes to him. But he is too devastated. He just like, no, he's going to stay in his sackcloth. And through messengers, Mordecai urges Esther to go plead with the king, with whom she had found favor and who still didn't know she was a Jew. So he had signed this thing. And he didn't even know his own wife was a Jew. He was like sentencing her to her death. Esther fears the king because it can mean her death for approaching the king. So one of the customs was, you can't just walk up to the king and be like, hey, buddy. So she was like, okay, if I approach him and he puts out his golden scepter, great. Then she's found favor with him and she can speak to him. But if he's irritated or had a little bit to drink again, she could be killed. But Mordecai challenges Esther. And this is Esther 4, verse 12 to 17. This is probably one of the most popular verses. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. Mordecai had such faith in God. Even if Esther was too scared, or she was just going to, maybe I'm just going to keep quiet, maybe my life will be spared. And Mordecai was just like, even if you don't do it, God will send us help from somewhere else. God will send relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Then Esther sent reply to Mordecai, go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day, and I and my servants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. I really love this relationship between Mordecai and Esther. Just the trust between them, just the faith that they have in each other, listening to each other's advice. Esther trusting that Mordecai had her best interests at heart. Mordecai had so much faith in Esther, and so he went away and gathered the people, and they prayed and fasted. Proverbs 13, verse 13 to 14 says, whoever scorns instruction will pay for it, but whoever respects a command is rewarded. The teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, turning a person from the snares of death. And how much more accurate can this be? Okay, chapter 5. After fasting and praying, Esther courageously approaches Xerxes, who, because he held her in such high esteem, holds out his scepter and spares her life. King Xerxes likes her so much, he says to her she can ask for whatever she wants, up to half the kingdom, and he will give it to her. However, she rather first invites him, King Xerxes, and Haman to a banquet, a special banquet that she was going to hold for them. And at the banquet, King Xerxes asks again, "What would you like? I will give you anything up to half my kingdom." And Esther says to them, "How about you come again tomorrow for a banquet, and then we'll talk about it." And I'm like, why would she do that? That's so weird. Like, just get it over with. But I feel like that was such a wise thing to do. I mean, it built suspense in the king and made him eager to say yes to her request. It built more pride in Haman, I guess, because he felt, yes, he was only invited. He was the only one invited by the queen. And it also gave her time to really sort out her heart and pray some more and prepare for this request that she was going to make. Anyway, Haman leaves the first banquet feeling very joyful and honored because he was personally invited by the queen, but his mood sours when he sees Mordecai once again not bowing down to him. And Haman goes home and boasts about all his wealth and all his sons and how the king had elevated him and the queen liked him to his wife and his friends. Now this is where another group of advisors come in. Esther 5, verse 13 to 14 says, "But all this gives me no satisfaction as long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate. He has all these things to spend his time and energy on, but that one guy is irritating me. That one guy irks me. So I'm going to ignore my whole life, everything that's around me, because that one person." His wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Have a pole set up, reaching to the height of 50 cubits, and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then go with the king to the banquet and enjoy yourself, because your enemy is dead now." This suggestion delights Haman, and he has the stake set up. Once again, the advice from the people around him was so questionable. Was there no other advice they could have given him? Anyway, Mordecai is pleased. He gets the stake built, and then he quickly gets taken back to the second banquet. Okay, chapter 6. That night, Xerxes cannot sleep, and he asks for a bedtime story. So they bring the King's Chronicles, and someone reads it to him. And he discovers that Mordecai never got a reward for exposing the assassination plot in chapter 1. Remember? Okay. At that very moment, Haman enters the king's court to ask for Mordecai's execution. Instead, the king asks Haman, "How do I honor a man who I delight in?" And Haman, thinking, of course it's me, thinking about himself again, suggests royal robes, a crown, a horse ride on the king's horse, and a public parade, and a nobleman walking in front of the horse proclaiming, "This is what the king does to him who he delights in." And Xerxes is like, "That's great. You go do that for Mordecai." I'm like, oh, jeez. So he does. He has to. The king told him to. So he does, has this whole parade, and he goes home so humiliated and grieved. And his wife warns him that Mordecai is of Jewish origin, and Haman will surely come to ruin because of him. But before she could give him any more bad advice, he gets rushed away to the second banquet. Now here we go, chapter 7. The climax of our story. I studied drama, so this is like my favorite. Anyway, so I'm just going to read the whole chapter 7. Bear with me. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. And as they were drinking wine on the second day, the king again asked, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. Then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. The suspense. And spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed and annihilated. If we hadn't been merely sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king. King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, who is he? Where is he, the man who has dared to do such a thing? And Esther said, an adversary, an enemy, this vile Haman. And everybody goes, Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king got up in a rage and left his wine and went out into the palace garden to calm down. But Haman, realizing that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. And just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining, begging her, like, you have to help me. And the king exclaimed, will he even molest the queen while she is with me in the house? As soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, a pole reaching to the height of 50 cubits stands in Haman's house. He set it up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. The king said, impale him on it. So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai, and then the king's fury subsided. Guys, I'm not making this up. What a turn of events. Proverbs 18, verse 12 says, before a downfall, the heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. Proverbs 16, verse 18 says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. And I'm like, Lord, please help me to humble myself before you have to humble me. Help me to be humble. Chapter 8. Xerxes gives Haman's estate to Esther and appoints Mordecai over it. Esther begs the king to revoke the decree against the Jews. So it's not, the bad guy is gone now, but the situation is there's still a law saying that on this date, they can go kill the Jews. So the problem is not solved. Xerxes explains to Esther that the royal edict cannot be revoked. Instead, he allows Mordecai to write a new decree giving the Jews the right to assemble and to defend themselves on this day. So the new decree is also signed, sealed, and delivered, and great joy spreads among the Jews because they can now fight back. Okay, we're almost done. Are you guys still okay? Okay, chapter 9. On the appointed day, the Jews strike down their enemies, but do not seize plunder. In Susa, the fighting only lost 1 day, but 2 days then, in the end. And Mordecai records these events and establishes the festival of Purim to celebrate their deliverance. And this festival is still being kept after all this time. The testimony of these people are still being celebrated. Don't think that the little thing that you're doing will not be remembered. Share your testimony. Share what God is doing in your life. The big things, the small things. Share that because someone is going to remember it. Someone is going to remember what happened when Landa went through this and God came through this way. Share your testimony. It's so powerful. So Esther and Mordecai's legacy lives on. Their testimony lives on to this day. Okay, then chapter 10, that's the last book. The book ends summarizing Xerxes' achievements, and it honors Mordecai, who is made second in rank to the king. Mordecai is praised for seeking the good of his people and speaking up for their welfare. And let me tell you, I hope Mordecai is a better advisor than all the other people. Like, maybe now there's hope for this king. Okay, so I have just a few quick thoughts to finish the story. Number one, and Ross and Ivan spoke about this last week, who you are matters, and the fact that you are here matters. It is not only the lovely Queen Esther or Mordecai who was born for such a time as this, but you are also here for such a time as this. Why were you born in this time? Why were you born right in this? It's not, die wêreld is so moeilik, ons moenie nog kinders inbring nie. No, our children are born for a time such as this. So who you are and what you do and how you do it can be a testimony to those around you of God's goodness. Or Proverbs 16 verse 2 says, all a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. My second point is, don't parade your faith, live it. Esther didn't have to go shout to everybody, I'm a Jew and this is what I believe. She just quietly lived out her faith. Throughout this whole story, we see it. See God through her character, the choices she makes, the way she conducts herself, cares for the people around her by fasting and praying. Her whole life testified of God, but he's not even mentioned. How amazing. God, help me, help us that our whole lives, everything we do, may it be a testimony to him. John 13 verse 35 says, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, by pointing fingers and shouting at people, and, this is what I believe. No, if you love one another, the way you love each other, the way you love your family, the way you love your children, the way you love your coworkers, or the guy begging in the street, or the person in the shopping mall, or whatever, how you love these people, that is going to testify, and that's going to show that you are a disciple of Christ. And then number 3, and I keep hearing this in like an Italian accent, Esther saying, if I perish, I perish, or if I die, I die. Have the courage to sacrifice whatever it is God is asking you to sacrifice, whether it is comfort or pride or money or sin or a certain lifestyle that he's asking you, lay it down. It might not even be something bad, but if God is laying it on your heart, step away from this. Don't pursue this. Be bold and brave enough to do it. Be bold and brave enough to be obedient, and have a, Lord, I will give all this up. If I die, I die. Have that kind of attitude. Matthew 16, verse 24 to 25 says, then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Last point. And this is what I want to end with. Who you surround yourself with matters. It matters. The people who are close to you, the people whose advice you ask, the people who have an influence on you, it matters what they say. And don't rely on the advice of people so often. Often, the first thing we go to is our best friend. Oh, something's difficult in my life. Let me quickly run to Melissa. And I'm like, no, the first thing I should do is run to God. Tell him, I am struggling. This whole morning, I'm like, okay, I'm scared again. Okay, I'm nervous again. You have to take it away. And he did. The first person you should run to is Jesus. The first person with any problem, with any situation you have, run to him first before you seek the advice of people around you. And I'm not saying they're going to give you bad advice, but he will give you the best advice. He will give you the best direction. He will be the best guide for your life. So seek His will first, His way of doing things, and then ask Him to surround you with people who do the same. Ask Him that the people who are around you will seek His heart first, before just giving earthly advice, humanly advice out of fear or pride. But ask God, please give me a word through Melissa. Give me a word through whoever is in my inner circle. Some of us are fortunate to have friends and family that trust God alongside us, but some of us do not have that. And I always pray when someone leaves the church or when they move away or something, I always pray, God, please give them friends and family on that side, wherever they're moving to, that they will be surrounded by people who seek you, people who search your heart. It's so important. It's so important to not just listen to everybody's opinions or every influencer that you follow. They're not your friends. We don't know them. You might feel like this obsession or whatever is a connection, but they don't know you. They don't love you back. You can love them, but they don't know you back. So focus on the people around you and ask God, please, the people in my life, I want them to have a heart for you. I want them to be saved, and I want them to pursue you. And I pray that we will all be humble, love God above all, and take care and love the people around us, and wanting the very best that God has in store for them. Make sure that your advice to your friends, your advice to your family is godly and good, and not flippant or, I'm just going to say something because I'm irritated. Make sure when you have to be the advisor, that it's wise and righteous and godly. Proverbs 12, verse 26 says, "The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray." And I don't think we have a slide for this one, but Colossians 3, verse 12 to 13 says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, which is all of you, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." And this reminds me so much of Esther. "Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you."